Hello and welcome to Off My Shelves, a YouTube channel that's dedicated to books on my shelves. Simple enough really. But yeah, I've always been obsessed with watching YouTube videos about other content creators showing books, previews and things like that. And it's always helped me make my purchases really, because if you're anything like me, you procrastinate and spend ages trying to deliberate over what book you should and shouldn't get because shelf space is so limited. So I thought it'd be nice to share the collection on my shelves with anyone willing to watch really, to give you an idea of what the book looks like, whether it's worth it and all that type of thing. I won't be giving in-depth reviews or anything like that really. I'll just be simply showing you books that for the most part I love because they're still on my shelves now. And so yeah, without further ado, we'll get started. And the first episode is quite rightly my first proper love in comics, which is the Hellboy series by Mignola. So we'll get underway with that. So the Hellboy series is literally the #1 comic in my eyes. I have never read and reread a comic book series as much as this. And it took me by surprise really when I first got my trade paperbacks of Hellboy, The Seed of Destruction and the early Hellboy stories. I didn't realise how much I would absolutely adore it, because it is almost polar opposite to the films and the kind of popular image that is of Hellboy out in the mainstream media really. These are all the library editions from Dark Horse, so they are beautifully bound kind of copies of Hellboy. This is a full set from volume 1 to volume 6, and then including Hellboy in Hell as well, which kind of stands separate to the main series really, but is a continuation. It should technically be volume 7, but I can understand why it's kind of its own thing really. We're going to get up close and look at these books in depth, and I'll talk to you a bit more about the books when we're looking at them. So the Dark Horse library editions of Hellboy are all amazingly put together books. And like I say, mine look a bit battered and bruised in places because I have literally read them countless times, well into double figures in fact. And there are paperback versions and omnibus collections of this series out, but for my money, the best way to read Hellboy is literally these library editions because of the size and scale of them. So to give you a size comparison to a normal trade paperback, for example, this is how big a trade paperback is in comparison to the size. Wider and taller. They all come hardback with a watercolour kind of print in the middle inset, cloth bound covering, and the binding is amazing as well, which hopefully you can get a look at now at the top of there. The binding is uniform on all of the books and there's no issues at all with any of them really. But to get into them, this one is volume 1, which contains Seed of Destruction and Wake the Devil, trade paperbacks volume 1 and 2 essentially. So the Seed of Destruction was the first trade paperback I bought, and it fell to bits because I read it so much, which is why I upgraded essentially. And there'll be introductions in all of them. The oversized artwork, when I bought this first volume, after reading the trade paperback and then come into the library editions, I was instantly kind of in awe of the scale of the artwork. Even though you might not think the size difference doesn't add that much to it, it really does. It changes the reading experience totally in every way. And the first story, Seed of Destruction, is Hellboy's origin story to a certain degree, and it comes on black pages, which really intensifies some of the artwork and some of the colouring. So if you're a fan of the artwork from Hellboy, you are just going to absolutely adore these series on every level. So I'm not going to flip through every single page because I don't want to give spoilers massively to people who haven't read the series. What I'm going to do quick is I'm going to just flip to the page that in this first edition I flipped to, and I thought I have to have all of the library editions of Hellboy in this format because it is such a stunning format. This image right here. When you kind of flip through this in the trade paperbacks, it's smaller and it's a bit less impactful, but when I got to it here, I was like, wow, that is an amazing image. And then the image of Hellboy being pulled down on a full splash page like that is astounding. As I said, there's 2 stories contained in this volume, and for the most part, There's 2 trade paperbacks in each library edition. So the second part of this one is Wake the Devil, which is an amazing story really, and follows directly on to a certain degree. The paper quality is amazing on these as well. Really, really astounding. And then one of the other reasons the Hellboy library editions are great is because you get a lot of extras at the back. Like this drawing, which is one of the first images of Hellboy, drawn back in 1991, even though he changed quite drastically. But then you get a lot of the sketchbook at the back, and the sketchbook is amazing. It's amazing to see the artwork in its kind of most pure form, because you really appreciate the detail gone into it, because the colouring a lot of the time abstracts a lot of the pencil work and detail. Not negatively, but it's just nice to see the penciling as well, really. The second book in the series, volume 2, is The Chain Coffin and the Right Hand of Doom, and this is definitely where they start lumping in to the short stories of Hellboy, and they really hit home with The Chain Coffin and the Right Hand of Doom and other stories and all that type of thing really. Again, a wonderful little watercolour print in the centre of the cover, cloth bound again. All the build is exactly identical on all of them really. And when we flip through, you get the contents of this page, of this book, which is obviously a bit more in-depth than the last one. The last one was 2 clear stories, whereas this one is a lot of short stories before we get to the sketchbook at the end. But every single one of these short stories is amazing, to be honest. And it's one of the main features. The short story kind of narrative of Hellboy is really a great thing for the series, because sometimes these long stories, while they're good, it's nice to break them up with these shorter bursts of stories that give you indications that bounce around through time and Hellboy's history. But you start off with Pancakes, it then kicks straight off with the Nature of the Beast storyline. And I should say that for the most part, all of the first 2 volumes are drawn by Mike Mignola himself, and no other artists. It's all coloured by Dave Stewart, but really the artistry you see is all Mike Mignola. And pages like this are stunning. The Corpse is one of the most famous Hellboy stories, and this, the way to read it on this oversized format, is definitely the way forward. And then at the back you get the sketches of Mike's artwork as well. Volume 3. Now volume 3 is my personal favourite, mainly because Strange Places is my favourite storyline. And unlike the last volume, this is actually one complete storyline to start off, Conquer a Worm, and then it goes into 2 shorter stories which form the Strange Places trade paperback and storyline. Conquer a Worm is really a turning point for Hellboy, massively, because he goes off and does other things. The one thing I will say without spoiling too much is at the end of this storyline it sets him on a path, a very lonely path on his own, and that's what kickstarts the Strange Places storylines. Starting first with the Third Wish, which sees Hellboy at the bottom of the ocean really. Starting off in Africa and then ending up quite shortly after at the bottom of the ocean. I love this storyline loads. This is where Hellboy gets really weird and wonderful. And one of the greatest things about Hellboy, I think, is Mike Mignola's ability to mix history and mythology and folklore with his character. So he intertwines Hellboy and Hellboy's universe with established folklore and stories and history already existing in countries all around the world. So you get stories from Japanese mythology, from English and Welsh and Scottish mythology, as well as every nation around the world really. They're all interwoven into the fabric of the Hellboy universe, which is pretty much one of the greatest things about it all really. And the second story is The Island, which I absolutely adore. It is weird and wonderful in all the best ways, definitely. But again, without spoiling too much, there's extras at the back in the sketchbooks, even unused pages and unprinted pages, as well as endless sketches. Volume 4 is where things start to change up a bit. As you see, Richard Corbin and other artists start to come in. This is 2 trade paperbacks as always. In one, the Crooked Man storyline and the Troll Witch storyline. It should be said that the Troll Witch is very much like the previous collection in Volume 2, a collection of many short stories, and the Crooked Man is one longer form story. And you'll see here that the Crooked Man is the largest story in the collection, and then full of other shorter stories, but you see the artwork looking very different straight away. It took me a while to acclimatise to the change in artist because I adored Mike's artwork so much. It was really strange for me to see Hellboy being presented in this different way, but it was very good in a way that it started off with Richard Corbin's artwork and this storyline, because the Crooked Man storyline is one of the best storylines, and the artwork of the Crooked Man is really freaky indeed. The Hydra and the Lion was drawn by Mike Mignola, and so you can see the artwork then return back to the same form as previous stories. The Troll Witch is another one of the same, and again there's no story notes in all of them and the sketchbook in all of them, but now the sketchbook gets a bit more diversity because other artists add to the sketchbook and add to the creativity of the world of Hellboy really. Now Volume 5 is another substantial change. This is the start of a real epic storyline that starts with Darkness Calls and the Wild Hunt. This is Hellboy going all out trying to find out his true kind of destiny in the storyline, but it changes up massively because of the artist, the Duncan, and I'm sure I'll butcher his name, yeah, Duncan Fegredo. Hopefully I didn't butcher his name too much, but anyway, I absolutely adore Duncan's artwork in every way, shape and form. He literally blew me absolutely away with his artwork in this and the following storyline that he did as well. Absolutely stunning in every way. You'd think on first look he's trying to emulate Mike and his work, but he's really not. This is kind of his style of artwork, and you realise quite early on how different it is. On first glance it's similar, but then once you get more into it you realise how unique it is on its own merits, and it is absolutely stunning. So the book starts off with a short story done by the pair called The Mole. So the first half of the book contains Darkness Calls, and I can't really say much about this at all because it'll give you massive spoilers, and I really don't want to spoil the series this late on, but it definitely brings a lot of the established characters and a lot of the established history, and even references back to Wake the Devil and Seed of Destruction and all the earlier Hellboy stories, and really refines that storyline massively. And honestly, I can't tell you enough how stunning the artwork is and how well written it is as well. This really is them kind of upping their game massively, telling an epic storyline on every level. No short form stories in this apart from the Mole at the beginning, but all out amazing storytelling in every way, shape and form. And then the second half of the book contains the Wild Hunt, which then takes that story to the next level and really again sets up the Hellboy kind of universe in a very unique way, which all comes to a conclusion in the following volume essentially. And that following volume being the Volume 6, The Storm and the Fury and the Bride of Hell. Now the Storm and the Fury is a continuation of the story started by the pair here, Mike and Duncan, from the previous Hellboy volume. And the Bride of Hell is then a collection of shorter form stories done by a range of different artists. So the start of the book literally carries on right away from where we left off in the previous series, The Wild Hunt. Still the same art and writer team. I flipped through the majority to not give any spoilers of that because pretty much every page really of The Storm and the Fury is a spoiler to the previous volume. So we'll click right to this, and again it gives you a content of the individual stories making up the Bride of Hell, and starting off with Hellboy in Mexico or A Drunken Blur. Drawn again by Richard Corbin in a stunning way, beautiful story again, and by this time you were more than accustomed when reading the books in order really, you're more than accustomed to Richard Corbin's stories coming in and doing wonderful things without going through every single individual story, because we'd be here ages. You do eventually get to The Bride of Hell, which is more Richard Corbin artistry. And we'll flip through to the back with a wonderful sketchbook, again by a variety of different artists. And then finally, the last book in the Hellboy Library Edition series is Hellboy in Hell, and this has just got one name on it because we're back to only Mike doing the hard work of writing and drawing and creating the Hellboy universe on his own. Nice image watercolour in the middle, same end pages, gives you a brief history of where we end up. I'm going to skip past the opening section because I don't want any spoilers of the previous story, but this sees our hero in hell for various reasons, but this is a really unique take on hell. It's kind of almost like a Victorian kind of strange and weird and wonderful place, really. It's not what you would expect from a hellish landscape on any level. So yeah, it's wonderful when you get into this to go through and see the artwork that brought you into the series, really. But I really don't want to go through this too much again because there's tons of spoilers, but the section on the back for the sketchbooks are wonderful as well. And yes, indeed, an amazing collection of books on every level, and my favourite collection of books without doubt. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed looking through the Hellboy and Hell Library editions with me today. And literally, you couldn't ask for a better quality book, better artwork, better story, better everything. As ever, like and subscribe and share the video where you can, and I will be back to show you more books off my shelves as soon as I can. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.